I'm here with Will Van Der Hart. Will is pastoral chaplain at HTB and one of the co-founders of the Mind and Soul Foundation. Will, it's so great to have you with us. Thank you for joining us to chat a little bit about mental and emotional well-being.
Thanks so much, Sam. It's great to be here, and hi to all the students out there who are joining this podcast.
Will, I'd love to hear, just as we start, a little bit of your story and how you came to be particularly interested in emotional and mental well-being.
Thanks, Sam. Yeah, like many people, I had no expectation or no desire to start working in mental emotional health. I was a very passionate apologist and evangelist when I was training for ministry, and I was really sort of gung-ho about getting involved in the church. I was quite young when I started training for ministry. I think I was just 23 when I got involved in the Church of England. I went off to training college at 25. And during that time, I was really passionate and really determined, actually doing student work like you. Came to London to do student work in quite a large church in central London. And then I got really tangled up in the London bombings in 2005. And following that, I had an acute anxiety-based breakdown. So I basically started having multiple panic attacks, couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, became depressed, became very, very unsettled in myself. And I needed a solid 6 months of treatment, including medication, therapy, and then ongoing work to sort of help me manage anxiety. So I had a bit of a sort of rude awakening, if you like, into the world of mental health. Whilst I was recovering, what I noticed was that Christians particularly struggled to talk about their mental health. This was at a time when, this is now 15 years ago, before Time to Change campaign, before really this became a subject that people are more ready to talk about. And I just thought, wow, if I am struggling with stigma as a priest, what are my congregations struggling with? And that's when I joined forces with my friend from Cambridge, Rob Waller, who'd become a very eminent psychiatrist, and we started blogging online around faith and mental health. So that's how it all started for me.
That's great. Obviously you're priest, pastor, and also kind of doing this work in mental and emotional health. What is it about kind of the Christian perspective? Why is it so important from that Christian point of view to be engaging with this stuff, to be thinking about it?
Thanks, Sam. Well, I meremember it seemed an irony to me that Christians seem to be doing worse than non-Christians in terms of their mental and emotional health. And I remember when I was unwell, two very beloved friends and leaders who were looking after me. One of them kept saying he thought I was just tired. So he was doing a classic denial. This isn't really a problem. This isn't really a thing. And the other one was sure that the devil had got into me. So he kept trying to cast the devil out of me, which made me feel very scared, because I was like, wow, and now I'm really worried that I've got some sort of demonic influence over my life. And my non-Christian doctor was like the kind of good Samaritan who really, he's the sort of, I didn't think that he'd have a particularly strong relationship with the church or a positive relationship with the church, yet he went above and beyond, calling me out of hours, asking me how I was doing, just amazing, a level of support. And I thought, well, something's gone wrong here if the faith element seems to stigmatize me, and yet someone from secular services and settings is really the one who's helping me. And I thought that's really sad, because the gospel is good news, and it should be good news for our minds. And what we realized, collectively and through years of work and study is that so many of the messages that the Christian faith offer to people with mental health issues aren't really the messages of the scriptures. So, for example, it might someone said, well, it says do not worry, and so everyone says, well, you mustn't worry if you're a Christian. You've got to trust Jesus. But actually, what they don't do is teach the whole Bible. So it says, don't worry about tomorrow. Today has enough troubles of its own. So Jesus is not saying do not worry. He's saying do not catastrophize, which is a different kind of subject to worry in itself. So what we wanted to do was to, particularly me as the priest in our group, because we've got two psychiatrists and a psychologist, is to read the Bible for all it's worth and demonstrate that the Bible is good news for your psychological well-being. And that work has been the kind of core work. And what the joy is, I don't need to make this stuff up. The Bible is good news for your mental health. And actually what we know through secular psychological studies is that faith is good for your mental health too. So if you're going to take away the supernatural element of faith, even just belonging to a community of faith is actually really positive for your mental health, and you will do better. But if the environment is stigmatizing, you won't do better. So our work over the last 15 years has been trying to break down mental health stigma, particularly around the religious community of the church, and helping to inform educated and psychologically positive conversation.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Obviously, with everything going on in the current climate, COVID-19, everything, the world seems in turmoil. It's having a huge impact. I think all of us are being impacted in some way, and some people, more acutely than others. What are some of the things that you're particularly seeing the impact of coronavirus on people's mental, emotional well-being? What are you seeing, and what can we expect to see as time passes as well?
Thanks, Sam. Well, I mean, it's been a really moving picture. We talk about the phases of collective trauma response, and we've been through the sort of sudden impact phase, through what we call the heroic phase, where everyone tries to fix everything and do everything brilliantly. We were in the disillusionment phase, or the kind of disempowerment phase, where people become very kind of low and frustrated. And I think we are beginning to move towards what we call the rebuilding phase, which is where things start generally to kind of get into a new, more positive frame. But this whole journey has been incredibly impactful for everyone, really, not just for people who have mental health problems. And I think what we do in life is build up a kind of scaffold around us that supports our psychological well-being, just as we do with our physical health. We might exercise and eat well and sleep well and do all those sort of things. And we do those things because it has a protective benefit. Our mental health works much the same. We might, do a meditation night, or we might go to the pub and see our friends, or we might go and walk the dog, or we might have a phone call with a particularly beloved friend who listens to us really well. But we will have built unconsciously a scaffold around us that supports our mental, emotional well-being. And coronavirus has really transformed everyone's landscape emotionally and stripped away a lot of the things that people do to stay well. And the loss of those things takes a while to have an impact, a bit like giving up all of your healthy eating habits. You don't see the loss straight away, but if you go 6 months down the line, you really begin to see the impact of eating badly, for example. And so with emotional health, it tends to be quite a significant lag. I think a lot of people are only now just realizing what they've lost, or maybe where their emotional health becomes destabilized. But it's had a huge effect. I mean, there's so many things, but obviously personal isolation is a real challenge to our mental health. We're created for connection, and we do better in community. But also we benefit from routine, range, good sleep, diversification. There's so much that we experience in normal life, which is good for our mental health. And lockdown has been really, really challenging. We talk about sort of mental health tsunami or a mental health epidemic as a result of coronavirus. I think we won't see that really established probably for another 6 to 18 months in people's experience. There's a long lag between sort of trauma and the trauma's impact. But this has been a really significant time. And not to suggest for one moment that everyone who's listening to this needs to panic that they're going to have some sort of emotional health collapse. It's certainly not uniform, and we're all resilient in different ways, but we do need to attend to our emotional and mental health as much as we possibly can in order to really reestablish some of the scaffolding that supports us in normal time.
So helpful, Will. How do we do that? How do we address that scaffold? What are some of the practical things that we can be doing to help look after ourselves in this time and building good rhythms as life begins to return to normal?
I mean, one of the first things that I find, particularly amongst Christians, is a kind of an emotional hardness to themselves. So Christians often berate themselves about their emotions, but their emotions are really benign. Emotions are like taking the temperature and then complaining that it's 15 degrees. If we experience emotion, we experience it because it really is an indicator of our reaction to our circumstance. And really what we need to do is be a bit more compassionate towards ourselves. And that means listening to our own thoughts and emotions with a greater level of curiosity and less judgment. So again, Christians tend to berate themselves when they're anxious. They call themselves lazy when they have low mood and they don't want to get active. They might be very self-critical about lack of joy in their lives. And all those things are generally unhelpful. Jesus did not float 3/4 of an inch above the floor for his ministry and was not constantly serene. He expresses a full range of emotion. He's full of joy, but he's also full of deep sorrow at the death of Lazarus. He's full of peace, but then he's full of extreme anger when he whips the traders out the temple courts. He's so distressed that he sweats drops of blood. Jesus' emotional range is so vast and complete. And I think we should allow ourselves an equally vast and complete emotional range. So the first thing to say really is to be aware of your emotions and actually spend time without distraction to ask yourself every day, how am I doing today? If you ask a friend, or if you ask a partner, or if you ask a parent, how are you doing? Try and ask yourself the same question, how am I doing today? If you're struggling to work out how you feel, and a lot of people say, I just don't know how I feel, I just recommend a simple tool. It's just the emoji tool on your telephone. If you just open a message and click the emoji button, look at all of the little yellow faces and try and identify 5 that reflect your mood today. And you can type them into the message that you're writing to no particular person. And when you found your 5, then just have a look at them. We're not all one thing in one day. So rarely ever is one day all sadness. But there's lots and lots of helpful, nuanced emotions there, which you can look at and then engage with. The important thing is not asking why, but just knowing that these are a reflection on how you feel. Some people like to keep a mood diary using emojis. So you could just basically open up in notes, and then every day, just track how those emotions are changing. And particularly if you feel like you're in a low phase, just to be honest about that. And beginning to engage with that reality can really transform your experience. So be compassionate, become aware of your emotions, do general things that are good for you. So what we know is good for your mental health is some physical activity every day. And obviously talk to your healthcare provider if you have any concerns about a change to your physical regime. But certainly walking, if you're able, is really good for your mental health. Lots of people say, oh, you've got to go running for 40 minutes or you've got to do a HIIT workout. That isn't necessarily true. Walking really helps your body, but also helps your mind, because something about being active and reflective at the same time can help you process lots of emotions. So I'd suggest 2 walks for 20 minutes to half an hour every day will really help your mental health. Keeping a rhythm is really important, as many of you will already know. Try not to go nocturnal. Try and get up every day, if you can, please, before 9 a.m., which will improve your sleep in the evening. Try and eat 3 meals a day without snacking copiously in between those meals, and try and keep sugary snacks to a minimum, because we tend to feed on sugar when we're feeling anxious, and actually it makes us ultimately have these very high and low sugar experiences, which aren't good for us either. So try and eat 3 meals a day. Try and have at least one phone call to someone who you know and love and you can have an honest conversation with. Avoid Zoom calls or other video messaging, because they're devoid of empathy. Close your eyes, lie on the sofa, call a friend and have a great conversation. That's the connection bit. And then sleep, which is affecting negatively. 50% of the population at the moment are experiencing some sort of sleep-related disturbance. And there is a program called sleep hygiene. It's got nothing to do with cleanliness, but that's how the psychologists call it sleep hygiene, which is the kind of process of getting into sleep well. And we know good sleep is essential for mental health, for positive mental health. And so that's not to worry anyone who's sleeping badly. You are resilient and you can manage this, but learning to sleep well and doing everything you can to get back to sleep if you're quite wakeful is really important. And I just recommend you follow some of the tips on the mindandsoulfoundation.org website there. If you just look at, for example, Will's top 10 sleep tips, you will get some ideas of the things that you can do to change your experience. So those are all very practical, but very important steps to take, just as a surround to your mental and emotional well-being. But if anyone on this call is feeling very distressed or experiencing any physiological symptoms of mental distress, panic attacks, anxiety of any kind, or low mood, then my best recommendation is always to talk to your GP. And GP mental health appointments are a priority, and you can call up and ask for a Zoom call like this to talk to your GP. You can ask for a double appointment if it's about mental health, if you want a bit more time to talk. But don't try and go it alone. Always ask for help.
Will, this has been so helpful. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your wisdom. We're definitely going to have you back again, if you will. Really good to chat. Hope you have a great day.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks, everyone.